All right. Hey, folks. All right. What's today? Thursday. Happy Thursday. All right. We are not going to be on here all night because I got to go to bed and it's already late. But we will definitely take a few moments to cover that debate. All right. Let me read these comments real quick. Um, what up, Christine? What up, have hope? Somebody said the debate was so tiring, I almost turned it off. Yeah, there was a moment where I left and went and picked up some food halfway through. I was like, I was like, I'm gonna come back to this. Um, Sun Kiss Forever said we're in big trouble. Um, let's see. All right, so anyway, I'm gonna just jump right into this because I don't want to have y'all up all night. Now, I'm not trying to be that person because I don't like being that person. However, didn't I say maybe a live or two ago? I said we don't need any debates, right? Because one, I feel like people kind of had their minds made up of what it is that they want, right? People who voted in whatever way they voted, usually are going to kind of stick with it. There's not going to be a lot of people that shift the other way, right? So I already said like I didn't think a debate was a good idea, mainly because and people tried to fight me on it and tried to make it sound like I'm a terrible person, but I already said the biggest thing that works against somebody like a Joe Biden in a debate with Trump is that Trump is quick on his feet. It doesn't matter, even if Trump, everything that comes out of that man's mouth is a lie. He's quick on his feet, and he comes off as assertive to an extent, depending on how you see the perspective of what it is he's saying. And so for Joe, who's a little bit more delayed, some of that has to do with okay, there's the speech impediment and the stutter and everything else. But again, I already said it was going to look just like bullying, and I was like, ooh, ooh, I was like, we were like in the first 2 minutes, and I was like, oh, I see how this is about to go, right? And the crazy part for me is like the debates were not even going to be a part of this, right? This is kind of like something they asked for, right? They kind of said, let's debate. Because I'm like, wait, what y'all debating for? Because really, if you're putting two and two together and you're looking at the turn of events of the last, few years, you know, you don't even really need to have a debate because at this point we've lived through 4 years of both candidates, right? People know what it is they got during Joe's first term. People know what it is that they've gotten during Orange Man's first term. So you don't really need a debate because it's more so like, well, what do you remember? How did you feel about that certain era? But ego got in there, right? And so I'm like, they pushed for this. So I just knew that with them pushing, because the media was like, yeah, he's at home, Joe's at home prepping, and I was like, okay, we have to see how this goes. If you thought the state of the world was something, or state of the world, that's a Janet song. State of the Union was something, y'all are in for a treat. So I'm like, okay. And I wasn't even planning on watching. And I was like, actually, let me go ahead and see how this is going to turn out, right? Because they kept saying he was prepped and he was ready. I'm like, okay, all right, we gonna see. We are gonna see. And 5 minutes in, I said, man, now I will say this. I do think in terms of actual substance, Joe has the edge in that debate, but the problem is the delivery of the message does not come in thoroughly because unfortunately from what I saw, it seemed like he loses train of thought sometimes or the stutter kicks in and everything like that. I don't know if it was nerves. The news was saying he was sick. I don't know because I just whatever. But again, like I said, I was like a debate probably not a good idea in this moment. Like, because I was like, at one point, I was like, can y'all tag Kamala in? Like, I know she on the sideline. Tag Kamala something. Because Jesus. Now I will say, the second half, it seemed like he kind of snapped back up. I don't know if they juiced him up backstage or what, but he seemed to be a bit more together. And I'm like, okay, finally. But I was like, dang, I told y'all not to do this crap, right? Interesting. And then for Trump, the thing that works in his favor with this is the bar was already low, right? He has really not a whole lot to prove because he already has his loyal cult following that, thinks the world of him. And because he's always just done whatever he wanted to do, there's no expectation of performance from him. He can go up there, say, do anything, do whatever. It's going to be what it is. And then even with the accommodations that were added, like, no audience, muting the mics. God, picture if there was an audience tonight. And picture if, man, but you know what? Here's the thing. No matter what, my thing is this, the debate was a mess, but at the same time, I'm not like a one-dimensional reactionary, all of a sudden this negates the last 8 years we've lived through. Because when it goes back to the policy, when it goes back to the legitimacy of everything that we've experienced in the last handful of years, it goes back to, we can look at both teams and see who's done what and who hasn't done what, right? And so there are still other issues on the table. We got a Supreme Court, right? That is over here showing their behinds, and there is definitely a chance for more shenanigans depending on who's put up there. Because I'm sure, I feel like if in the event that Orange Man was reelected, I think that's when you're going to lose Thomas and Alito. They're going to retire, and then Orange Man puts two more people up in there, right? So I see that happening possibly, or if it was the other way around and Biden is in there, now you have a chance to balance out the Supreme Court because then Thomas and Alito would not try to retire, right? They're gonna try to stay strong and pray Father Time don't take them on out. Interested, but I'm like, we still got everything we talked about in Project 2025. You still have everything happening in regard to like the conversation around women's rights. Like there's so many other things that's still pertinent to like what's happening that I would hope that this random, I don't know what we watched, but whatever that was, I would pray that if anything, that makes the different teams of these people that are running really like get their ish together. But also, I would pray that it shows that to everyone else, like, okay, y'all gonna have to really think long term about the decisions y'all want to jump into with this election. Because man, and it's weird that CNN didn't do like fact checking. It was like you just go there and say anything. The part that got me, it was when Orange Man was talking about the third trimester, abortions and talking about, yeah, they had the baby and they put the baby on the table on the side and figure out what to do with it after she gives birth. I was like, wait a minute, hey, okay, y'all out here just saying anything. But yeah, they should have got, who's that guy from Colorado I saw that was doing the Colorado debates the other day? Whoever that guy was, bring him up in there because he was cooking everybody. He wasn't letting people get away with no kind of nonsense. But I don't think there's any gains from this. Like if you're somebody watching from the outside in who hasn't paid attention, I don't know what you would leave with, right? I don't think this was a good night for Joe at all. I don't think it was necessarily a good night for Trump. I just think it's an expected night for Trump where he did exactly what I said he was going to do. And because the bar is so low for him, it makes him look, like he got it. But then when it gets to Trump didn't really answer any questions. I mean, how many times did they give this man a question and he went back to something from 30 minutes earlier because he was like, and another thing. And so I'm like, all right. And then when they got to the black jobs, I said, I don't even like the way y'all saying black. It don't even sound right the way y'all saying it. But, whew, Lord, where do we live? 335 million people live here, and this is what we get to be excited about. So I don't think the debates really move the needle, but I think they do highlight some things that need to kind of be managed and addressed, right? Now the good thing is it's June. Americans have short attention spans because we live in a space of extremities where there's always something crazy happening every day, right? This time next week, there's going to be so many other things that have taken place in the world that this debate will not be a conversation. And then a week after that, you got a July 11th sentencing for somebody. Like, that's what gets me. Okay. You are doing a debate against somebody that got a whole bunch of convictions and cases, and still somehow it didn't go in your favor. Like, and I will say it was funny because I'll give Joe the line with the what did he say? Morals of alley cat. I said, okay, all right. But he, there was a few moments where he was trying to like get them jabs in and he wasn't landing them. I was like, ooh, it reminds me, I don't know if y'all remember this. Remember on MTV they had the show Made where like people wanted to be something, like it'd be like, oh, I want to be like an NFL player. So then, they bring in like a team of folks to try to help the person become really good athletically to be an NFL player. One time he had this episode and it was like this white boy, like kind of like a Napoleon Dynamite type of white kid, right? He wanted to be a rapper, like a battle rapper, right? So they had been working with him, and he was going to end up doing this battle rap. And so he goes out there and he does his rap or whatever. Now, mind you, what was crazy, his dad, from what I remember, was a member of the band, or the production team that made Funky Town. Remember, won't you take me to Funky Town? Like, yeah, them. His dad was like a producer or something like that. And so I remember the dad like playing the drums and they were practicing. But anyway, they go to this battle and he starts doing his raps, right? Now, mind you, it wasn't good, right? He just never quite got there, but he did this line that I'll never forget, like almost 20 years later. He's like, that's why you got all your rhymes from hiphoplyrics.com. And it was like everybody in the crowd was like, they were rooting for him, so they kind of let it slide and gave like courtesy claps. Like that's what it kind of felt like a few times when Biden was kind of getting the jabs, because he would start like ready, but then it would fizzle out. I'm like, damn, right? By the way, just so y'all know and understand, I don't like Orange Man. He will never get my vote. That's where I stand. Y'all do what y'all want with it. That's how it's always going to be for me. Orange Man will never. Not for me. Can't do it. Too much nonsense. And so, yeah, for me, I'm just observing. Like, yeah, my mind's already been made up with this thing. But geez, I think the emphasis is going to have to be for voters who are in these people's cabinets. What do the people in those cabinets represent? What are the end goals? What are the policy? What is the move for the next 4 years? Now, even though Joe was not able to get out a lot of what he was trying to say, if you could make through the grade matter, you could hear the policy that they were trying to implement and push. Orange Man, I heard one or two things, but again, to me, it was like a continuation of what we've already seen. But again, this is why I said the debate wasn't needed, because to me, I think it still worked a little bit more in the favor of Orange Man than it did for Biden. And if Trump is smart, Trump would say, "I'm not debating no more. I already, done." And so it would make it, that could be the lasting impression. But I think Trump has such an ego that they'll probably have another debate because he'd be like, "The way I cooked him so bad, let's do it again." Um, oh, that was painful to sit through. Painful. I was like, "What are we watching?" Anyway, the only highlight I can get out of this is at least by 2028, it'd be some new faces in there. But yeah, I think it goes back to, again, we have to really look at what the policy is and what's been happening. And this is just me on how I feel. You ain't got to agree with me, and I probably will not fight you on it. But for me, I'm looking at what was done under each administration, and for me, I still think there's more pros under the current one than the last by a long shot. It's not even close. Whether it's the child tax care credits, right? Whether it's the attempts at student loan forgiveness, even though we've seen how the other side continues to gut every opportunity that comes with that, right? I did hear Joe in the beginning say the idea of rent caps to make sure that these private equity firms would stop scamming over people, because that's why everybody's running so high now. I'm like, okay, that's something I would like to hear. Um, you know, where they both lose me is with international policy, right? They both lose me on that because there's certain things where I'm like, eh, 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 I'm not a fan of this current administration's movement with everything that's happened with Israel and Gaza at all. But at the same time, if Orange Man was in there, he would do the same thing, probably worse. He already told y'all he couldn't even answer the question about the two-state solution. So there's that. It's also noticeable that he didn't really give a clear answer as to whether or not he would accept the results of the election. He, started talking in circles and again starting to make up things that are not necessarily true. And that's why I was like, why don't y'all have fact checkers? But then I forgot that when we're talking mainstream media, understand most of the mainstream media networks would love for Orange Man to get back in there because he gives them ratings, right? He brings, I don't want to say excitement because there's nothing to be excited about, but there's a liveliness that's there with the controversy that makes his actions newsworthy, that bring ratings. Understand that news media has had some of the highest ratings in the last 8 years because of the unconventional approaches to politics right now, right? And so, yeah, there are a lot of executives and CEOs that are hoping this man gets back in there because they know that it would be another 4 years of Lord knows what every single day. So, yeah, we're going to have top notch stories and ratings through the roof, as opposed to if Biden has another year. Biden is a bit more collected. He's not going to really do too much that's out of the box. And so he doesn't really have a lot of major controversies that are newsworthy. It's more so, you notice when they report on Biden, if they're not talking about his age, when they're talking about the actual policy, there's not a whole lot they can really run with it and turn into like front page story most of the time. As for the other guy, it's like, yeah, we can talk Stormy Daniels and we can talk the Mar-a-Lago documents and all the top secrets sitting next to the toilet and this, that, and like there's so many different things. So yeah, there's some leverage in the idea of, again, the media would benefit from a second term of Orange Man. And I feel like that's why they've been moving the way they move. I think that's why CNN chose to push further to the right after 2020, and then when the ratings started to like slip, then they're trying to bring it back the other way around. But you're seeing it everywhere. Anyway, let's read some comments. Let's see how much fighting we're gonna do tonight. Now I ain't arguing with y'all on none of this because I said what I said. But yeah, like I said, that debate wasn't needed. I said that before. They didn't need that because that did not help anything. Said that, right? Oh, okay. Now that did make me laugh, Joe. Good job, Ray Joseph, when he said, you're a sucker and you're a loser. I was like, dang. But see, when Joe said it, because he had that cold or whatever, it didn't have enough to it. I was like, man, it's like, if you're going to cook, you got to cook right, man. That's the one thing. Like, as I said, I don't do and deal with Orange Man, but because he's so just, he's just a character, right? He lives for this. So God, he can throw the punches. I'm like, Lord. A mess and a half. So at the end of the day, this debate was a disaster. But when we're talking policy against policy and talking about what has actually benefited the people, it's not even close. Y'all can get as mad as you want. I don't see the benefits of a second Trump term, right? Even when they were talking like if we just go line by line, because even when they started talking about the black economics, right? It was interesting to watch Trump start saying all the things he said. And I'm like, but we've been here for both administrations. I can't think of anything Trump did before y'all started trying to bring up the HBCUs. We've had this conversation a million effing times, right? All Trump did was extend a policy that was already lined up anyway through the administrations. And then when we're talking the numbers, the Biden administration actually provided more in funding the HBCUs than the Trump administration, if we're talking the numbers. Sorry, y'all can argue about it all you want. And even then, that's still not a whole lot of money. It's about 2 billion. Well, let's pull the numbers. I don't even want to just start talking like that because I don't want nobody talking about I'm up here making up stuff. We just talked about this on one of the lives. All right, let's go with Orange Man first. Trump HBCU funding. Let's see here. Um, all right. So continuation, 255 million in annual funding, right, for HBCUs. Now I need y'all to understand that sounds like a lot of money. Now, as an alumni of Howard, like just understand Howard's endowment last year was about $855 million. That's for one school. There are over 100 HBCUs. So understand the idea of spreading $255 million doesn't really go that far. All right, let's go to Biden, right? 16 billion from fiscal years 2021 through 2024. Do the math. So that's about $4 billion per fiscal year, right? There we have it. There's the numbers. So there's that piece. Orange Man and his team will talk about opportunity zones. We've done this a million times. I'm tired of talking about it. Please see my video I did on Lil Wayne when he tried to jump on this. But again, opportunity zones did not create opportunities for Black anything. It more so just sped up the gentrification process, right? And it was because of the stipulations within the policy. Opportunity zones, the program, the idea was to give tax breaks to businesses that open and operate in what you call opportunity zones. They went and found the most destitute sections of the country, or the segments, the places where poverty was super high, where there weren't a lot of jobs, and said, you open your business here, we'll give you tax breaks so that you can thrive. But here was the issue. The line items within that policy also said that you already had to pretty much be a business that was already established, and you have to already be able to afford to have your own building and this, that, and the third. Automatically, that pushes out anybody that's mom and pop. That pushes out anybody that's still up and coming. That pushes out anybody that's Kickstarter. Secondly, there was no line item in the policy that said that if you open a business in one of these opportunity zones, you have to provide jobs for the people in that area, or there has to be a certain amount allotted to the people of that area that where the opportunity is being created. And what ended up happening is this did not create jobs for people in these areas that were destitute. If anything, it's kind of like what you see with Amazon as they've set up in Arlington, Virginia. Like, yes, there are new jobs to the area, but all the great jobs, those nice six-figure jobs and all that, Amazon is just moving their employees that are already in other places of the country and having them come to Arlington. This was not opening the doors for people to come into these higher positions. No, it wasn't anything like that. And it's kind of the same thing with opportunity zones. A lot of these places just pretty much brought in their same execs, their same people, and set up shop. And it turned out that the majority of what was created in these opportunity zones did not really benefit the people of the area, because the majority of the businesses that were open were in the areas of hospitality. So real estate and hotel accommodations and everything else like that. Things that were already going to push out the regular people of the everyday city blocks and stuff that lived there. So opportunity zones did not actually really help anything. It more so spread up the process of gentrification, because as they develop these properties that are now, luxury tourist spots, it runs up everybody's property taxes, right? And then people get pushed out because they can't afford the property taxes, especially people who are on a fixed income, who no longer have anything additional coming in, and they're depending on specifically just their Social Security or what's left of their 401k. And understand that when you retire, the longer you live, the less money you have to go around, because the way that your retirements and everything are set up is set up for the experience of the average lifespan. But if you've been blessed to live past 80 and make it into your 90s or your 100s, the money is really tight. So understand, as property taxes skyrocket in your area, what do, right? So that was the kind of thing for me. And then again, I'm sorry, I just remember, like, Orange Man is pushing for the idea of giving whatchamacallit, what was it, qualified immunity to police, giving them pretty much the luxury to go and shoot and kill anybody, do whatever they want. Now, I just there's too many other things on the line for me to just all of a sudden think I'm going to jump and switch over after this night of a debate, right? Too many things. Hold on, I'm gonna pause and read some comments, but there's just too much nonsense. But I'm like, Lord, next time y'all send Joe up there, y'all need to give him his Wheaties, please. Like, don't send him up there. Lord, what? You just y'all let Kamala do the talking. Like, that's how I'm looking at this. At this point, I'm like, if both of them were to have to step out, like if either or, let's say Orange Man won, or let's say Biden wins, right? And let's just say there's a moment where either one has to step down and leave it to their cabinet to run everything. I'm looking at who's in the cabinet. And I'm sorry, that last cabinet from the previous administration was full of a lot of nonsense. So if you think I'm asleep well knowing that them people would be in charge, right? We're already in a space where folks are like breaking their necks to cement everything and pretty much corrupt things as they are now. Like even somebody was asking me about this today as well. And this is a little unrelated, but the whole thing with them, one, the Ten Commandments in the school, that's Louisiana, but then the other piece in Oklahoma where now they're going to like start teaching the Bible in the classrooms. Understand this is what's actually happening. Like these people know that these are policies that really kind of go against the Constitution, but this is what they're doing. They know that if they can get these items or these issues to the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court has been giving an inch here and there to a lot of things, eventually, if you put out so many things that are just so against the grain, unfortunately, with the makeup of our current Supreme Court, there's a lot of shenanigans that's being allotted and being allowed right now. So the idea is come up with the most extreme, whatever it is that's out there, and we're going to go to the Supreme Court. We may lose in this case, but there may be one piece that they budge on. And the problem is there's going to be so many little pieces of things that get budged on that we keep moving further and further. Didn't we talk about this on the last slide where I said we live in such a space of extremities right now that the chaos seems normal? And I said, if you could, you know what I mean? Like there's people who move like, oh, we'll be all right. Everything will be fine. It's just not that bad. And so we've had so many, it'll be all right. It's not that bad that if you were to take somebody from like the year 2000 and have them time warp over to 2024, they'd be like, what place is this? What happened, right? Because there's been so many, oh, we'll be all right, and so everything just keeps shifting and just nudging. So we're in this era of nudging and just throwing things at a wall and seeing how much folks can get away with, right? We just saw the Supreme Court ruling with the ideas of even the conversation of like businesses and buying out politicians, pretty much. Please go and pay attention to that ruling that just came out yesterday. Right, there's so many things, even with the situation in Idaho with women's reproductive rights. Like I need folks to realize this is so much bigger than those two guys that were on the stage tonight. Like I think we need to think about life in the next 10-20 years. And Father Tom will probably call both of them out of here by then, but we still have to be here. So I need folks to start thinking long term. All right, anyway, let's read some comments here. Yes, a whole convicted felon that can't even vote and gets to run for office. That's wild, right? He said the black jobs. Okay. Mm-mm-mm. And I'm tired. Oh, by the way, I'm tired of Orange Man bringing up his convictions and trying to somehow correlate that with the black experience and making that relatable to us. If that's the only thing you see us as, I got a problem with that. Like I can't. But yeah. Listen, push for a really great cabinet. You might need to start marketing your cabinet. Like this is who I've got. That's gonna be over the economy. This is gonna be who goes over education. Because again, like I said, that space we were in of we'll be okay, just nudge here, nudge there. Betsy DeVos over the Department of Education, and now look what's slowly happening, right? She already started chipping away at different things. Now we're in a space, and you're looking at the efforts to pretty much defund all of public education, which we talked about on the last slide. Crazy. I don't know what Joe's team needs to do, but they need to do a full 180 and a rebrand ASAP. Shanti Sachet said, it's about the administration, it's about the Supreme Court. That's how I'm looking at it. Because my thing is, if you got enough of the right people around you, we'll be okay. You think about some of these people that are entertainers that suck at performing, right? They can't sing, they can't really dance, but they go and they do these big giant shows. Hold on, we're not doing no ads. They go and they do these big giant shows and arena tours and everything, and they got 100,000 dancers, they got lasers, they got all kind of staging and gadgets that move around. There's water that's gonna come out the stage, there's lasers that's gonna shoot down, there's fog, there's smoke, and then the people in the audience got the little glow sticks and everything, and the glow sticks are correlating with the lighting and everything else like that. And so you still have this really great time at the show, and you don't even realize that the person on stage wasn't doing much. Listen, if you got a strong enough cabinet, at this point, with the two options we got, I can take a strong cabinet. So that's where I'm at, right? And yeah, so and I think the Biden, y'all gotta do a better job of just marketing what you've done well, right? You don't. I feel like they finally started to do it, but yeah, especially a lot of people who's gotten it. Like, listen, if you follow my podcast, when I'm always talking about Ava was happy when she got her student loans forgiven. Couldn't wait to call me about that. I said, okay, so yeah. Let's see. Reba and Buckner said, what were the so-called black jobs that 45 said immigrants were taking? See, and the wording of how that's presented when they were talking about, like, see, if we're talking hospitality, which I think, one, that's one element of the conversation they're talking about, and they're also talking agriculture. in the past, if we're talking decades ago, yeah, you had a lot of prominent black people that were working in hospitality and housekeeping services and in agriculture. And I'm not talking agriculture in the conversation of owning their farms, but I'm talking about the people who actually work the farms. And I'm not talking sharecropping. I'm talking 1950s, 60s, 70s, right? But then you had the issue of people starting to lowball, right? And lowball because they knew that you could get people who were undocumented to take a job for lesser pay because they're just happy to be here, right? And so that has expanded into the conversation in 2024, and that's kind of what he's running with, and that's kind of the argument that he's utilizing. But my issue with that is it presenting it in that way, or that narrative paints the picture of the only thing we're good for as black people is positions of servitude. So I think the ball is dropped in that conversation, and I also think it's the idea to kind of push like what I've noticed with Orange Man's approach is everything has to be an us versus them, good guy, bad guy. All of these people, never mind that you gave these massive tax cuts to the super wealthy and the middle class and the working poor and the working class are paying for it. And that's why all of our taxes suck and everything else like that. Never mind that. We're going to put the blame on everybody else. So his approach has always been blame somebody else for everything else that's wrong because everything he's done is perfect in his mind. That's my beef with him. A mess though. Let's see. Somebody said, it don't matter which one of them ends when. The U.S. corporation is just two wings of the same bird heading to the same destination. To that point, that would have been my perspective in about 2016. But I will say, if we're talking about the two wings, I think one wing has allowed a lot of shenanigans, a whole lot of shenanigans that's actually detrimental to the country. And it's all centered in the idea of the lens of whiteness, right? Where that GOP side, like, look at who the candidates are. Even when we're talking state and local level, look at the people that are slipping in through the cracks and coming into positions of power. I don't think you can say the same thing on the other side of that wing. Like, I think if you're talking GOP, you're talking Republicans right now, they have become the house of white nationalism. That's what they're in for. And that's why there's such a campaign to really push a lot of like these grifters to the face of that. That's why you got like Byron Donalds out there tap dancing, Tim Scott, who today was saying some nonsense about, racism is a thing of the past and Martin Luther King would be proud of what he sees today and all this other stuff. And, he did all that tap dancing to still not be selected as VP. You done went and married somebody you don't even want to be with, to try to give the illusion that you can be the VP that they want. And we saw how that worked for you. Vivek did all that tap dancing, and Vivek is not in the running to be VP. Nikki Haley pretty much threw all her morals down the street after running on a whole campaign saying she is going to be the option of common sense, and she will be the one to give people a chance if they don't want to deal with the two candidates. And then what does she end up doing? Going and endorsing Orange Man. Why? Because, well, hell, if I can't win the election, maybe I can get a spot in the cabinet. So I see a little bit more nonsense on the white nationalist side. Now, this doesn't mean there's not anti-blackness on the Democrat side either, but it's a totally different space for me. Parties both have their issues, and it goes back to what I was saying, where you have the house, right? You have the kitchen on fire and you have the garage flooding. Which one do you take care of first? Now, if I'm giving my analogy here, the basement flooding or the garage flooding to me would be Democrats, and the kitchen on fire is Republicans. Fire is going to move a whole lot faster and tear up everything, but everybody a lot of times spends so much time in the basement pressed about this water, they forget the house is burning down. When if anything, they could have used that water to put the fire out. Like, that's how I look at it. Anyway, Man Rico 01 said, I think Biden won. Trump didn't answer any questions. And what are black jobs? The last time those existed was 1864. That goes back to what I was saying earlier, where I think if it's a conversation of substance, Joe had the edge to me. Trump just was a bit more coherent as far as being present and loud. It didn't mean what he was saying made any sense. But for a person that's not really plugged in and hasn't been paying attention, he may sound like the ideal candidate here. But yeah, to me, yeah, they should have just not even had a debate. But let's see. Thank you, Calvin George. He said, I don't think you fellow citizens were not listening for policy. They just wanted to see who had the best stage show. And again, it goes back to presentation too. Like that's one of the things that I think has worked in Orange Man's favor for a really long time is, one, there's the unconventional approach, and then he's unapologetically himself. And some people love that. I do also think that works against him. But you have to, even thinking back to 2015, 2016, right? When they had that first GOP debate, and Megyn Kelly was like, you called women this, that, and third. And he was like, oh, correction, that was Rosie O'Donnell. I knew right then. I said, ooh, we are in for it. Because, boy, and look at how much politics has changed now, right? And so you even got Republicans who've compromised themselves because they're afraid to go against the MAGA code. Um, let's see. AI said 55% of the white women vote and 55% of the white women vote for 45, and he repaid them by eliminating Roe v. Wade. Right. And I said this on the last slide where I said there's a lot of people who move as if there's always another opportunity. And I don't always think that's the case. And I think we're in a very slippery slope where the United States as we know it could really drastically change depending on what kind of folks get in there, especially if that project. First of all, the Project 2025 thing is already going now. They're already doing little bits and pieces of it now. But I really do think like that right there in itself is going to be some chaos. And the fact that even when we're talking about foreign policy, the way that a lot of people, especially on Orange Man side and GOP side, have been complacent in the idea of kind of allowing countries that, first of all, I don't like the wording of this, but countries that we don't deem as our allies to get more and more leverage to do some of the things that they do that pretty much, cause detriment to the United States overall later down the line. Like this idea of kind of letting things slip and slide and all in the idea of they got to get their guy back in there. So yeah, we can turn a blind eye to whatever this country's doing, or we can turn a blind eye to whatever that country's doing. Like, especially when we're talking conversation around Russia, right? Um, and in that same token, I'm like, I need Biden and them to stop letting Netanyahu punk us every week. Like, how you talking trash, but you need our money to go and kill people? Like, what kind of nonsense is that? I feel like that's where y'all are dropping the ball. Screw 32. I like how you wrote that. Trump lies. Trump's lies sounded confident. Biden's truths were hard to watch. And again, what sadly works against Biden is because he does have the speech impediment and the stutter, and then you also take into account age that you are going to be a little bit more delayed if you're not well that day. A lot of the messaging I think got lost, right? Um, so yeah, lots of low energy tonight. Y'all still going off about the blacks jobs and the Hispanic jobs. Yeah, that wording, it goes back to that idea of making it seem like black folks and everybody else, we just get the scrap. So as long as we throw y'all something, they should be happy, right? And them black jobs. I was like, what are those? Okay. Yeah, at the end of the day, there's no way I would entertain Orange Man with this. Nope. Can't do it. All right, Pretty RJ444 said, look, we have to vote for the House. This is the only way to keep, or this is the only way that we protect ourselves from that Orange Man. He's gonna get in and vote for the House. I'm sorry, I'm acting like I can't read tonight. Look, we have to vote for the House. This is the only way that we protect ourselves from the Orange Man. He's going to get in again, vote for the House, vote the crazies out. I actually don't think he's getting in again right now. Even as crazy as tonight was, I still don't see it. But it would help to definitely ensure that you have some leverage in the House and the Senate, and even at the state and local levels, right? Because at some point it becomes a conversation of harm reduction, right? In the event that Orange Man was reelected, what is the harm reduction you can do, right? So the more leverage you have, or the more power you have within Congress and the Senate and everything, that kind of works in your favor to an extent. Right now, there's not a lot of leverage with the Supreme Court. Supreme Court is compromised. We already did a live on that. We talked about the payouts and Clarence Thomas and his $4 million in gifts he's gotten, right? So yeah, a mess. Renaissance woman, yes, speak on it. Do I have to remind y'all, Obama had a horrible debate for his second term, but Joe came in clutch with the VP debate. That was 8 years ago, though. And I hear that. I think that the challenge is because so many people are going after Joe for his age. That's the piece that works against him, because what ends up happening is anytime that Joe does not perform well, it's going to always be attributed to his age, whether it's his age or not. Right, that's the way that people want to look at things. And even with it, Joe and Orange Man are only 2 or 3 years apart, but there's definitely a difference in. Well, this is where I think Joe did get him good, right? When he started talking about Trump's body type, and because Trump already said he's 220 pounds, and I said, Trump, please. But yeah, if we're talking physical shape, Joe be on his bike. He might fall 1 or 2 times, but Joe be on the bike pedaling and walking the dog and out there, and they be doing it. If you're talking physical shape and health with the other guy, it's cheeseburgers all day. So I don't know. A lot. Somebody said, honestly, Trump would whoop Kamala in a general election. Unfortunately, she would not be option to replace Biden. I don't even think they're replacing Biden. Folks would be feeling concerned for a day or two. They get over it. But I do agree that unfortunately, the way that whiteness works in this country, they are not putting Kamala up there. Like even if Joe were to step down, they would still not push Kamala to the front. They would still have her play VP for somebody else. They would do a move and like throw Gavin Newsom or somebody up there. They're not putting Kamala out there because they understand how white voters work. And she wouldn't even get the women vote because white women are not voting for her in the same way they didn't vote for Hillary. Hillary couldn't get more than 43% of the white women vote. So imagine throwing Kamala out there. They're not doing it. Like, yeah, it's not happening. I hate to say it, but that's the way it goes around here. Um, Lorna Doom 90, you think Donald Trump won't croak? He's not healthy at all, and y'all worried about stuttering and not noting that Biden bikes X. Oh, we just talked about that. Okay, she was ahead of the game before I got to it. All right, that was Lorna. And yeah, like I said, Trump ain't got the best health either. I'm not gonna say what I be thinking sometimes because I'm gonna sound like a horrible person, but I'd be like, all right, any day now with Orange Man. Um, let's see. Y'all are going, and this is supposed to be a quick live so I can go to bed, but we might end up being here for a good hour. Um, Selena Sheila Lewis said, we have to continue organizing, doing political education, and winning local elections with more progressive people in every state so we're not caught slipping. I think people really need to. I think where folks are also lacking is there's not a lot of candidates being pushed out there. And a lot of times people end up in a space where they're reacting to what they don't like because they don't like any of the candidates. And it's like, on this channel, at least since 2018, we've been saying this is the time to start like putting candidates out there because like with candidates they need to kind of have somewhat of a presence that's known where their ideals or their viewpoints and their perspectives can kind of start to be heard, right, where it starts to become a part of a common dialogue, right? So even if we talk about like reparations, right, so with reparations, you notice reparations was never talked about in any presidential campaign until you had all these different groups start talking specifically about reparations and bringing attention to it and pushing and getting at the idea behind different candidates and stuff, right? And then what ends up happening is then we start getting these debates in 2020, and now reparations is a piece of the conversation. And now it's not such a foreign science to hear the conversation of reparations. It's always been a part of the dialogue, at least since, for decades. But it definitely has kicked into second gear in the last 10, 15 years, right? And so I think the idea of getting candidates out there that have these viewpoints, and sometimes they're not always going to be popular viewpoints, and sometimes people as far as the general public need time to digest and sit with things before they really start to get excited about something or want to get behind something. And I think what ends up happening is it's always very last minute that somebody shows up to the table, and then they don't have a shot, right? So I think of some of these candidates that have gone against these people that are pretty much locked in. Like when I think of all the people who run against Mitch McConnell and lost, right? Or the people who run against Ted Cruz and lose, or like the people who run against some of these folks, and there's just not enough of a voter buy-in to what it is they have because that candidate's too new to the scene, right? I feel like putting people out there in 2018, 2019, 2020 would have had Americans more receptive to them in 2024, 2026, 2028. And I also understand every year there's some kind of election going on. But I think the emphasis on putting more candidates out there that are backed by the people. And then the challenge you run into is then you got to make sure they're not bought out, right? Then you have that conversation at APAC. It's another conversation. APAC will get you out of here, right? Let's see. Exactly, Rick. Playground insults. That's all it was. Let us see here. Y'all are really going in tonight. I am what I am said. Black Americans are tired of saving America. We need to save ourselves. And unfortunately, you got to keep saving America because when America doesn't do well, we're the first ones that are collateral. That's the part that sucks in all of this, right? You got to get behind candidates sometimes you're not even crazy over or even excited about, but you understand that depending on who gets in there, you're going to be the one paying for it later down the line. Because understand, anytime America has a downward moment, the people who suffer the most are us every time. If you're talking the Great Depression, right, everybody was down bad, right? We half of us was still in sharecropping, and even in that moment when we get the New Deal, none of that was for us. That was to get everybody else back on their feet. They said, "The hell with y'all. Y'all figure it out. Y'all be all right." Like, every time, right? When we're talking about the housing bubble and that predatory lending and everything that happened in '07, or when it bursted in '07, which indirectly led to the stock market crash of '08 and everything, some of the people that felt it the hardest were black folks, right? We're always collateral to the decisions of white folks, unfortunately. And that's because we live in a country where we're not the majority population, right? And so it's kind of like, as much as it's all about ensuring that you and yours are well. If the country ain't well, we end up even worse, right? Which I think really, really sucks. And that just goes into more so the conversation of the long-term effects of when you've had punitive policy work against you for as long as you've been here, right? We're the only demographic in this country where literally our economic situation and the conversation around our if you want to talk about the wealth gap, is all situated in federal policy and its end result, and state policy and its end result, and how it affected us. That's the only collective group that has that experience. There are groups that have their issues and have things that have worked against them, and there are some groups that are really experiencing that now in this current space we're in, because we're in this very retaliatory space where a lot of really terrible politicians are pushing terrible policy to go after different groups of people. But when you want to talk about a group of people who have never been on the receiving end of collectively positive policy that enhances the collective experience, that enhances the wealth, that enhances the opportunities. Black people have never had that in this country. And then when things are worse, people want to take, when things are worse and it's bad for everybody, then we have to suffer even more, because other people need they need somebody to be mad at. They need somebody to still be above, right? This is why a lot of working class, poor white Americans will vote against their own interests, because if they say, at least in that moment, we know who will still be beneath us. At least we still won't be those people, right? All right. Jay Hodges, again, allowing teachers to have guns and teach the Bible is convoluted. And this is the direction we're heading in. When I keep saying this idea of cementing things and then also just throwing things at the wall and seeing if you can just get an inch back from it, even if it's only an inch back, it's a gain for that group of folks that want to do all this crazy, wild, draconian stuff that they're doing, right? That's what we're living under. Let's see. Now, this nerd large, we're on the same page. Them's had their chance to show strength after Jim 6 and punish all the insurrectionists, including Trump. Now it's too late, regardless of this election. But the issue, I think the Democrats did their part. But the problem is you had a Republican Senate that would not convict Trump during that impeachment. It had they, and it's specifically Mitch McConnell's ass, because he's the one who told everybody, we moved on, we're going to let it go. He's learned his lesson, right? Had the Senate convicted Trump in that impeachment after January 6th. And mind you, what's her name from the U.S. Virgin Islands did an amazing job of presenting all the facts. What should we call it? Like, literally, what did they do? They're like, no, they gave a pass. They would not convict him. So you had the House say, yeah, he's been impeached. The House impeached him, and he needed to be convicted in the Senate. The Senate would not do it because Republicans wouldn't budge. They wouldn't cross those party lines. Again, because that idea of maintaining the status quo. And so now here we are, right? And then even with this, there's a big Supreme Court case that's on the docket we'll hear from soon, where, this may actually pretty much throw out the charges for hundreds of people who have been, charged and convicted, depending on how this case goes in the Supreme Court, where they try to say that, the conversations around insurrections are specifically for people who are like in positions of power, people who are specifically like corporations and not like individuals. Like, that's going to be a very interesting case to see, right? Or the immunity case, because Trump said he was president, he deserves, absolute immunity. So we'll see if the Supreme Court decides that it's okay for a sitting president to shoot somebody in the face 10 times and step on a baby's head and then burn down a school and burn down a church and shoot up a mall and then blow up a museum and then, I don't know, set a few bombs off and destroy a bridge and kill a bunch of Americans and see if they still have immunity. We're going to see what the Supreme Court says on that one. All right. Shansi Shay said again, an attempt to pit blacks and immigrants against each other, which is a thing that they've been trying to do. Because again, now, if you could get all of these groups to be on the same page politically and want the same things, there would be a lot of power in that. Unfortunately, there are some divisions that are there, but I think they also recognize what could happen, specifically if you could get the Black collective, some of these immigrant populations, and then the working poor in America to get together. That, first of all, that pretty much pushes everybody out of office. everybody who's out of office who would not cater to their needs, because there's too many represented in numbers. Like when we're talking about how many, I don't think people realize how many poor white Americans there are in this country. Right? There's a lot of them. Now, even though when we're talking the numbers and the poverty rates, the poverty rates are high for Black Americans, but because again we're only 13% of the population, those numbers still don't measure up to when you're talking about how many white Americans are like dirt poor, right? And I don't even like to phrase it like that. That sounds very classist, but like, how many white Americans are really struggling to just make it through the month, right? Through the week, right? It's a huge population, but unfortunately, that bug of anti-blackness jumps in. And then here comes a division. And so a lot of them have latched onto whiteness because they think it will take them further. And it hasn't. But again, and because it hasn't, then here comes the rage. And this is why you get like the cult religious following behind Orange Man, where they feel like this man is Jesus. And now he can sell them a Bible with his name on it. And they're over there worshiping the what? Crazy, crazy. Victoria begins in the garden, said, I got student loan forgiveness. That is good for you. Amen to that. I know that was a good day when you checked that statement. All right, we're gonna wind down a little bit because I want to go to bed. Um, CC said it was one bad performance. Please calm down, y'all. We have work to do. That's what I was saying. Like it's only June. Folks aren't well. Folks will remember this, but again, there's so many things that are going to happen between now and in November in this country. All kind of extremities that this will be like. Ask people right now to go and recite what they remember from the three elections from 2020. People wouldn't even remember. If there's anything folks might remember, they might remember the fly on Mike Pence's head. They might remember that. All right. Mm-mm-mm. Oh, I forgot I made tea. Look, I had some tea over here the whole time. I forgot. Yes, it was that hibiscus tea. Tea be hidden. All right. Oh, EB, come on, come on. Did you already talk about how Trump equated Black Lives Matter movements to January 6th? And see, again, when I tell you there's no leverage with this man, they asked him specifically about the conversations around January 6th and the conversations of responsibility. Now, mind you, he somehow threw it on Nancy Pelosi and said it was all her fault. But then the idea of shifting that and then talking about protests against police brutality and then talking about what was happening in New York and what was happening in Portland. And if he didn't send the National Guard, they would have burned the city down. Like, I need folks to remember what we were living under at one point, right? Because I'm sorry, he's no friend to Black folks, especially when it comes to the conversation of law and order. That's the main thing. Like, he has no problem locking everybody up even more, right? Um, yeah, I was like interesting. That was the first thing you brought up. They asked you about accountability for January 6th, something that you pretty much are responsible for to the point where you've been charged for it. And somehow you tie this back to anti-police brutality protesters, right? Interesting. Okay. Um, All right. Taylor Lewis said, working class labor is valuable. I've done it in half my life, but it's racialized. That's where Black jobs comes from, racial capitalism. And I will also say that the threshold of like what these jobs once paid has changed. Because like I told y'all, like my dad used to work at the window factory when I was a kid, right? He worked at Milgard Windows, right? He was making windows, right? But making windows, he made some really, really good money. And mind you, he wasn't like somebody in like a major role or major position. He was like one of the people that kind of at like an entry level spot making the windows. His job was to do the frames, the little frames that they had, right? But the money he made from that, plus what my mom made from being in the military, because at this point he got out the military, like it was enough for us to be in a household where we didn't have to want for anything as children until later down the line he got into a different field of work. But like unfortunately, like a lot of those roles and those positions don't pay what they once paid, right? And that goes again to the era of deregulation. Thank you, Reagan, for that. Right. So when we're talking deregulation and how you started to see just the discrepancies between the pay of workers and the CEOs and how big banks pretty much run, going back to Reagan, like we don't give him enough smoke. The fact that Donald Reagan was the person over the economy, not Ronald Reagan, but Donald Reagan, that was the guy. I think he was over Merrill Lynch. Let me make sure I got this right. Donald Reagan. Why did you? Let's make sure I got this right. Yeah, he was Secretary of Treasury and he worked for. Come on, man, where'd you work at? It was one of these big, giant, super. Hold on, let me make sure I get this right. Um, why is it not? Okay, I'm getting annoyed now. It's not over here. Merrill Lynch. Okay, I was right the first time. Pretty much the guy in charge of Merrill Lynch, right? You put him over to make him be Secretary of Treasury. This is when the tax codes changed. This is when the super wealthy went from paying 60, 70% in taxes down to like 20 or whatever. This is when the middle class started paying for a whole lot more out of pocket in order to maintain the infrastructure of the country. This is when college tuition prices skyrocketed, right? A whole lot happened under that Reagan administration. Lots of deregulation. Lots of it, right? And now we're living through it. Somebody said Nikki Haley never had morals. That's yeah, Nikki again. Same with Tim Scott. A lot of these people, some nonsense. D. Watson, CNN is problematic anyway. Yeah, especially after they switched the leadership and everything, and then they decided to push further to the right. Because again, there's money to be made in racism in media. They love that part. There's lots of money to be made. So that's the direction that they wanted to go in. Like I said, the news media would love for Orange Man to get another term because it means that their ratings will be sky high for another 4 years, right? Think about even when Orange Man was out and Biden got in, the news cycle was still centered on Trump every day. Even before the investigations and the charges and everything, it was still all about Trump every 5 minutes. Because again, the idea of highlighting, whatever else he has going on. Or think about the fact that even before he announced his candidacy this time, they were still covering random rallies he was having. Just random rallies. Him as a private citizen living life, having his random moments and rallies, and they got it live streaming. We're going to take you live now to the Trump rally. All right, he's giving them ratings. Yep, Tyler, I said the same thing. They shouldn't have had this to begin with. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Sabrina said, I was not surprised about the black jobs comment. The Trumps would not allow blacks to rent in their buildings. Yes, we remember that lawsuit. It's interesting. It's just interesting the people that are here to represent us. That's what I'll say. Like interesting. Um, Angel White said Biden did give a little food for thought when he said if it's up to Trump, civil rights would become states' rights. You know what? I was speaking of that. This is a question. All right. Somebody sent me this long email, let me have it the other day. And they were like, you talk about race too much. You make everything about black people this, black people that, black people this, black people that. And he's like, don't you realize we've done so much to make your life easier and you don't even know how to say thank you? And then I started thinking, and I was like, you know what? If slavery was on the ballot in 2024, and when I say slavery, I'm talking about slavery. So, yes, the servitude, but slavery in the aspect of how slavery pretty much created the United States economy. If you could translate that into 2024 and all of the elements that came with it and the powers that some people were given, I was like, if slavery was on the ballot in 2024, would white America, how much, well, one, how much of white America would vote for it? Right? I was like, because I got that email. And I was like, I feel like a lot of these folks would vote us back into slavery if they could. If whew, and what's crazy, I feel like it would definitely, at least if it was on the ballot, I'm sure it would at least get a 30% vote. And to me, that's an issue. And I really believe that would be a thing. Y'all let me know in the comments what you think on that. Like, I feel like, yeah, if slavery was on the ballot, there are a lot of people who live here who would happily sign that off, right? And again, if it promised the idea of, creating, because think about when slavery was happening in the United States, that was like the biggest economy in the world, right? One of the biggest economies in the world. It pretty much sped up all of the wealth that was created, all on the backs of free and unwarranted labor from Black Americans, right? But the wealth that was generated and how it would create corporations and just all of these big multi-billion and 100 and 200 billion dollar companies where their start came from slave money, and some of these universities that stayed afloat because of selling off slaves, Georgetown and some of the other places. Like, I feel like folks would vote that right back in based on what I've seen in the voting pattern. Even the idea of Lauren Boebert winning her primary the other day. I said Colorado, whatever district that was, y'all had all kind. She's not even from that district, right? That's not even her district she's from. She fled her initial district because it wasn't right wing enough, jumped into another one, and still won. Wild. Woo. All right. Sergeant King said 200 billion to Ukraine is real zero to Americans. And even with that, when they're talking about that money, most of the time that's weapons that's already lined out to begin with in the military budget anyway. So it's not like they're actually writing a check for that money. It's just they're pulling out of the stash whatever weapons they got and sending them over, and it's valued at 200 billion. That's normally how that goes when we send weapons to other countries. Now, and again, 2/3 of our budget is for weapons and military. So yeah, that's something I got to beef with because why are we spending more money on weapons and military than for education and healthcare and everything else? But now we've gotten ourselves into a space where now you got to spend money to defend yourself because everybody got smoke with us. The only thing saving us right now is the fact that there's two big oceans on both sides. I understand if the United States was landlocked and over there, folks would have been tried to invade a long time ago. A long time ago. All right. Let's see what we got on here. We're gonna wind down. All right, what's my chat doing that? All right, let's see. All right, we're approaching an hour. Somebody said no one else is a strong enough contender against Trump except Biden. And I'll say to that point, the demographic of Americans that are over the age of 65 love them some Biden. I think that's what's pushing him over the edge, right? Now the other demographics are not as sold and not as married to him, but and I understand that's one of our largest demographics in this country, those over the age of 65, which is one of the reasons why I think he was able to have the success he had in 2020. Yes, millennials showed up, Gen Z showed up, Gen X showed up, but the baby boomers, for them, Joe is familiar because he's been in politics since, what, the 70s? They've known him since 74, 75. So, that's the one saving grace he has. So even with him performing in the way that he performed tonight, for them, they still see him as an extension of, and this is not all of them, but a lot who are the supporters in that demographic, they see him as an extension of their experience. So yeah, that's some of the saving grace that he has. Let us see. That's a great question. What kind of October surprise do they got ready this year? Like, understand every election cycle, there's always some kind of October surprise that happens, right? 2016 was the grab 'em by the you know what tapes, and that was also when Comey went up there and said, "Oh, we're investigating Hillary Clinton." I was like, Lord, that's wild. But every October, there's always something that happens that shakes the table right before the election. 2012, that was Romney with the 47% comments, where he's like, there's 47% of Americans who think they're entitled to health care and to this and there's something and they never work and they're never going to amount to anything, and they want it, like that little secret recording that was out there. It's like, woo, every time. Mm-mm-mm. Let's see. Somebody said Trump amnesia. Yeah, there's so much stuff, folks. What you call it? They act like they even passed it to nonsense. Sometimes I'm like, maybe y'all need to go back and look at some of these videos we were doing in 2020 through about 2023, no, I'm sorry, 2016 about 2021, just to recall what we've all lived through. This channel was a time. Ooh, what a time, what a time. All right. Somebody said Nancy Pelosi never said it was her fault. She said Schumer were mad because they wouldn't step in sooner. That's what was on video. And then on top of that, that video was played for all of us. Like, I remember MSNBC was showing something like this was like a few months ago. So that's the thing. That's why they should have fact checkers there, right? It's weird that's weird to me. CNN don't need to do no more debates either. Like I said, they have leverage in this with Orange Man winning the full election, right? Um, Will Bowler said, they're implementing Project 2025 here in Indiana. So that's what's going to be my key reason for voting for Biden. And that my thing again, too, if folks are really letting this random night determine anything because this was all just talk. This isn't the policy. I'm like, folks need to look at what's on paper, what's been signed, what's been vetoed, what's been gutted, what's been endorsed, who's been appointed. Those are the things to look at, right? We can respond. It's kind of like I remember when Kanye was running, and I was so annoyed because a lot of people were like, "Oh, I'm going to get behind Kanye." It wasn't even because he had any policy; they just liked how he moved. They, oh, Kanye, he's genius. He's the dopest. I'm like, we cannot be this spiraled by entertainment, right? It doesn't work this way. Crazy. I, God, I don't want to fast forward to 2028 because I don't want to. God, I think I'll be 40 by then. But sometimes I'm like, can we just fast forward to 2028 and see if we still gonna be here? I just need to see. Yes, I agree. News media is a huge fail. I think folks should really look at independent news media because I even MSNBC they try to claim that they are what they are, but I've been seeing that thing with what's her name, Cat. What's her name, Cat or Katie? Whatever her name is, but her name came up in some of them documents and how she's kind of been in on some of that. Mm, okay. Pretty RJ444 said the lesser of two evils is getting old. Like I said on the last slide, I think some people are still using talking points from 2016. We're past that. We're in a space now where at this point, like I've said, we've lived through two administrations that are both running for the chance to be back in there. And you've seen what both have done or what they haven't done or what they got behind or what they endorsed or who they appointed. And so at this point, you need to kind of look at that. This is almost like that dang Tyler Perry movie. I want you to get a piece of paper. And on one side, I want you to write down all the good. On the other side, I want you to write down all the bad. Like we're almost at that point with having these conversations. Like, man, let's see. Where are we at here? Y'all said 45%, 75%. That's to that slavery question I had. 70%. Someone else said 30%, baby. Don't be so generous. Something like 60. KO said 25%, bare minimum. And the other thing I'll say to that too, right? So when folks are always talking about racism as a thing of the past, until people can collectively tell me that if that idea of slavery being on the ballot was a thing, that the vote would be under 1%, nobody can tell me that we have moved on. That should be the threshold. If slavery was on the ballot, would Americans vote for it? Right? So until then, I don't want to hear nothing about it. Y'all need to get over it. I'm not getting over nothing, especially when the policies we're still living under it. Right? Please. Andrea Brown. Democrats can't win this country without the black vote. Very true. So white folks need to think us all. And the funniest part too, Republicans don't need the vote of anybody else because they have enough representation from white voters, which is also crazy to me. So that's why I feel like Republicans have never really made an effort to try to shift and change. Right now, they're doing this whole campaign where they're claiming that they're pulling in the black vote. It'll be very interesting. I can't wait to see the numbers in November because I really think the numbers are going to be about the same. I don't see this drastic shift over to the I don't see it, and I can't wait for them numbers to come out in November. Um, but yeah, and it's crazy because in 2012 when they lost to Obama the second time, they said we've decided we have to be more inclusive. We have to make an effort to include everybody else and not come off as so stoic and cold and dismissive of everybody else's experience. And we're going to make an effort to be more inclusive. And as soon as Orange Man came down that escalator, they said, "Never mind, we got it. Let's go full out white nationalists." Right? To the point where white folks have gotten so comfortable in their racism, they're having whole conventions. They don't even put the hoods on no more. They out there fresh faced in front of the camera, right? Having a great time. Let's see. Manny Castello, what's going on? I'm going off about something I don't know. I don't know what the context is of what you're responding to here. It'll come up later on. Let's see. Um, what up, Alan? Mm-mm-mm. Somebody said, "I'm glad that's over. I don't think any more debates are needed. It's stupid. We all knew how both of them feel about any issue. We're in big trouble because people expect and just want entertainment. And it goes back to like what we're saying, where I think everybody kind of knows where these people stand on the different issues. So at this point, it's up to you with which of these two or three, if you want to throw RFK in there, um, or really, actually, I'm gonna say this. Like I said, for me, if they're not on the ballot in every state, or at least in all the states that you can win in, if you got enough of their votes, then I'm not. I just don't see them as a part of the conversation, unfortunately. But yeah, it's kind of up to you if you know where you see your values, your viewpoints, what it is that you value, and what it is that you want, and how it measures up or aligns with whoever's running. It's kind of on you at that point. Like I think everybody knows, you know what you're getting with both of these candidates because we've known them for a good minute at this point. But again, Project 2025 for me is that's the nail in the coffin. That right there ends any conversation. The Supreme Court ends any conversation. What they're doing to public education right now ends any conversation for me. The idea of still trying to get rid of universal health care, that's a conversation killer for me. The conversation of what we've seen happen with affirmative action and women's reproductive rights, and even state and local levels, right? I just saw what happened in Florida where, DeSantis just created or he signed off some law where um, Florida will no longer announce to the residents when there's toxins in the water or the water's unsafe to drink or swim in. Like simple things like that, where now it's not even about policy that is better for the people. It's just policy centered around ego and how much can I do? How much can I push my weight around? Like that's wild to me, right? Vanessa Seymour said, taking a break from politics, SWV's on Tiny Desk tomorrow. I'm going to be watching that on my lunch break. I can't wait. I'm so pissed. I won't be able to go to their concert because I won't be in town. But yeah, sticking to the politics. Yeah, Project 2025 is very Handmaid's Tale. That's right, Wes said. She said, we will be 25 in 2028. That's right, because my musical age is only 24. That's my musical age, is 24. So I said, I'll be ready to run for president in 2020. Y'all know good and well, if I ever ran, first of all they're going to do, whoever my opponent is, they're just going to pull up everything they can find on this channel. And they're going to have so many sound bites that they can throw out there that they're going to pull out of context. And I'm going to sound like the most terrible person in the world. Right? They going to get me out of here. And then, when you run for office, you got to kind of lay all your dirt out on the table on day one. So I have to tell everybody what kind of family I come from both my dad's paternal side and my dad's maternal side. And then my mama's side, I got to name every person that done stabbed somebody, or put them all down the list so nobody can try to throw it in my face later. We got to talk about those that done been in the bank robberies and those that done, my family got some stories. So I got to put all that out and let y'all know where I come from and who my folks are. So there's no gotcha moments later down the line. So by the time I go down the list of all the dirt, they're going to be like, Lord, well, actually, I might actually win after that. He's one of us. That's all right. Let's see. Now make sure y'all pay attention at your local elections. There's a whole lot going on, and like I said, I've been trying to be a bit more intentional about talking about what's happening in the different states locally when I find different stories here and there. Like we spent a little bit of time with Louisiana, and now I kind of want to focus on a few other states as well. But yeah, really pay attention locally what's happening. And some of these people that are running and what their end goals are, right? Because when you have that conversation of power to the states, that lets folks get away with a whole lot, where there's going to be moments where there's going to start being policy that you see that is so draconian and what the heck is this? And folks are going to think, oh, don't worry, the Supreme Court will overturn it. And what's going to end up happening is the Supreme Court's going to be like, no, we're going to leave that to the states. States need to figure that out. So be ready for that. Now, if I were Biden, my team would have the best commercials coming out tomorrow to kind of clean up tonight. All of the people that represent me in my cabinet would be doing all the press runs, right? My team would start all of a sudden promoting and showcasing the accomplishments that have been done. Because that was the other thing. I did notice that when the two of them were debating, Trump could never talk numbers. Trump just kind of talks in parables and fables, right? When he says things. Biden was kind of doing some numbers. There were some numbers he was mixing up. The first time he was trying to talk about the $35 insulin, which again, going from 400 to 35 was great, but he slipped up and said 15. But he caught it at the end and said 35. Like those kind of things, that's what you have to harp on and highlight and remind people of, right? Oh, dang, I dropped my phone. But good, aiming for a good case. And so that's why I feel like if I was Biden, my team would be in like DEFCON 2 mode right now. Let's clean this up. That way this can blow over by the 4th of July and y'all can do y'all fireworks and keep it moving. How long have I been live? Just about an hour. We're about to get off anyway. This was a spur of the moment. This was not planned because I was trying to let my other video do its run. The thing is, like, when you do a video, if you like upload another one like the same day, it kind of messes up the algorithm of the other video sometimes. Man. All right. Let's see. We'll do a few more minutes and I'm gonna get off in like 5 minutes. Somebody said, and your bookshelf is almost identical to mine. I need to I want to change that whole setup because there's no more space over there. I gotta figure that out. Let's see. It says I'm not even responding to that comment. That is funny. Piscean Beauty. That made me laugh. Let's see. The indigenous syndicalist said, having a literal Nazi as a candidate, literally, because listen, the way he didn't back down from half that stuff he said, y'all, okay, keep playing. Folks keep moving like there's always tomorrow, and there is tomorrow, but tomorrow might not have the same opportunities and the same freedoms. Remember that. ADOS conference, October 3rd to 5th in New Orleans. Angela White wanted to share that. Marvin Truitt said, I'm not down with either of those clowns. I'm not married to any of them. I'm in a space where it's all right. Where's the harm reduction? Like I'm at this point, I'm in the space of harm reduction. Who can do the least damage? Right. That's kind of where I'm at. Somebody said that rally for reparations was great the other week. Let's see here. Somebody said, what's up with the cognitive test discussion? Again, entertainment, smoke and mirrors, a bunch of crazy things. Because even though Trump might come off a bit more present, I think he's a whole lot more loony than the other guy. The other guy just come off a little bit more delayed. But if you ever take the time to sit and watch them rallies and that nonsense he starts saying, Pookie Wheat said harm reduction for who? Not Palestinians. Well, when it comes to Palestine, both sides are terrible in that. The United States, unfortunately, because of it's being so bought out by Israel, both sides are on the wrong when it comes to Palestine and what's happening in Gaza. But at the same time, when you're talking harm reduction, I feel like in the event to want to fight and ensure that others have the liberties and freedoms that they should have, we got to at least be able to have ours to even go out and fight before we lose ours too. Like, that's how I'm looking at it. But no, I don't agree with this administration at all with Palestine. But again, or as far as how they've been moving. But again, if Orange Man was in there, he would have done the same thing, if not worse. So with that, again, this is when you talk about AIPAC and you realize that candidates in both parties got AIPAC money. Like, that to me is wild. Palestine, that's sad to see. But, when we're talking global affairs, there's a lot going on in so many places as well. And it's interesting to see which ones our governments throw money at. And I agree with what Tyler Hackner was saying, where again, and this is unrelated, but taking money out of politics. The minute you can take money out of politics, you'll actually get some real politicians that aren't bought out. You'll get real politicians that are for the people. And then even when it comes to campaigning and stuff, I feel like if people, my thing would be this. Right now we have 2 major parties. Let's say we had 4 major parties, right? I feel like once the parties have their candidate and it's locked in, I feel like every candidate should have the exact same amount of money in their campaign for marketing, advertising, whatever they do. Everybody should have the same thing, because I feel like when you got a bunch of money, you can buy somebody out, right? Or you can buy out your competition, and I think that kind of sucks. But yeah, let's see. Anthony said, I don't know why people think Republicans are about to save money. They're not. Netanyahu got to go, first of all. I already said, I did this a long time ago in one of the videos. I said, Netanyahu to me is just like Trump. When Netanyahu lost his election in 96, He said, "I'm gonna show y'all," and he came back with a vengeance like later in '99. And then the Netanyahu y'all see now is somebody who is on a vengeance run and will not back down from anybody. Turns down every ceasefire, you know, proper everything. He is not budging, and this is not about the freedoms or the people of Israel. It has nothing to do with that. This is he already kind of has mapped out what he wants to do, which is one, they want to pretty much just gut out and get rid of Palestine, push all the people out, take over the land. Great real estate investment. That's the move. That's what it's been. It's a land grab. That's why they've been snatching the land for years and years and years. And it's to the point where folks can't talk about it because they either get deplatformed or demonetized or they lose their jobs or whatever. And that's because, again, money in politics. Folks are bought out. And yeah, there's that. So, man, that man is a terrible person. And thank you, Angela White. Even Hill Harper talking about how, they offered him, 8 figures to run against, what's her name? From the squad, 8 figures to run against her, as their candidate, so they can get her out of here. Like, understand, there's some dirty trick going on behind the scenes as well. All right. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. But like I said, we have a few more months before this election. I just hope people pay attention to the actual policy. I hope folks really, the good thing is I think there's a lot of people out there that are trying to share actual information that actually has, the elements that people need in regard to like making the decisions for things that are best for their life or best for their outlook. Now, I'm somebody who tends to have a very like communal approach to my politics. Even though there's things that I specifically want, I always kind of look at what's for the common good. And the first common good I look at is Black folks. The second common good I look at is how does this fit the whole country, right? And sometimes they kind of switch back and forth within, their respective roles. But that's how I look at things. It's, for me, I'm not just about me and mine and the hell with everybody else. If I don't get what I want, then everybody got to suffer. I don't move that way, right? I look at things from a very communal approach. And I think, and that's just me. Y'all do whatever y'all want, right? And so, yeah. We'll see how this goes. Like I said, this was not needed tonight. I don't think this helped a whole lot of folks. A hot mess. By the way, because this was a very unorthodox live, and I kind of just went from the dome, I'll probably have another live next week. Maybe we'll do Thursday. There should be enough time to have had some life go and take place. I do need to upload another podcast episode to the channel. The actual new podcast episodes are already out. If you follow the Comedically Hard-Headed podcast. By the way, for those in LA, you can see the premiere of Pull Over So I Can Hit You, my short film at the LA Shorts International Film Festival. So kind of excited about that. I think that is everything. So I'm gonna let it go. Like I said, stay safe, stay sane, mind your business so that you can age well. And I will see you guys later on next week. Good night, folks.